A British jihadist with the Islamic State this week beheaded American photojournalist James Foley and warned US President Barack Obama to stop bombing the terrorists in Iraq.
Any attempt by you, Obama, to deny the Muslims their rights of living in safety under the Islamic Caliphate will result in the bloodshed of your people.
Meanwhile, Indonesia's Jemaah Islamiyah and its spiritual chief Abu Bakr Bashir, who are behind the Bali bombings, have pledged loyalty to the Islamic State.
I think that does indicate the potential for increased terrorist activity in our region.
But when the Prime Minister asked our own Muslim leaders to meet him to discuss protecting ourselves against jihadists, the Islamic Council of Victoria refused.
The Prime Minister went on radio in Sydney and made some comments which, from our perspective, simply indicate that this, you know, in inverted commas, consultation is nothing more than a media stunt.
I'm back with Michael Kroger and Gary Johns. The most important part of that video, apart from the horrific beheading itself, was to me, the British accent of the killer.
Yes, and the question implies, of course, could this happen in Australia? The answer for Australians is one, we don't get out and referee fights between factions of Islam in the Middle East, so that implies a sort of containment thing. And at home here, we keep our immigration program high-skilled, which is bound to make sure that fewer people of the Muslim faith come to Australia, but it's not based on prejudice against their religion. And then that makes it...
But that's, you're implying that's the clear intent.
Well, because you must keep the numbers of those most likely to not integrate as low as you can. And we know that people from not only a certain faith, but from, say, rural backgrounds of poor education are most likely to get into trouble. So it's our problem, and we can manage it if the numbers are small. And Muslim leaders in Australia really have to wake up to this, that we are managing the problem about their citizenship in our country.
Look, the high qualifications thing, most of the London bombers were university graduates. A lot of the September 11 bombers had been to university, technical, you know, Mohammed Atta.
And born in Britain. But the point is, if there are sufficient numbers of disaffected people and young men are drawn to them, you get into trouble. So it is partly about controlling the numbers and the quality of the immigrant, and it's more likely that those people of higher education will integrate, which is a perfectly reasonable thing.
Yes, but Michael, we had some 80, more than 80 Muslim leaders and groups signing a statement saying, wait a minute, you're just picking on Muslims with this immigration, with this anti-terrorism stuff. The reaction has been very disappointing from those leaders, I thought.
Look, it's been a terrible reaction, to be honest, Andrew. You know, let's be frank. What is this all about? This is all about Muslims beheading other Muslims. This is the threat to world peace today. Muslims taking knives and beheading other Muslims or shooting them in the head in front of children without trial, just a different part of the same religion. This is the greatest threat to world peace today. The most violent you know, form of behaviour we've seen since Kampuchea, Idi Amin, whatever else. Now, if these Muslim leaders in Australia are not prepared to go along with the anti-terrorism laws and condemn that type of behaviour, which many of them have not, then that is an incredibly sad reflection on them, a bad reflection on them, and the government is just going to move on without them. I mean, what kind of culture is being bred in some of these suburbs in Sydney that allows 150 kids to go to the Middle East, to get involved with ISIS? I mean, this is what the government, and this is what these community leaders should be asking. What culture are we breeding here in our community in Lakemba and elsewhere that allows these kids to go over there?
And yet we had these 80 groups, and what worried me was that some were actually quite allegedly moderates, you know, Australian Muslim Women's Association, University Islamic Societies, Western Australian Muslim Lawyers Association, signing a joint statement with extremists like Sheikh Abu Ayman, who once said Osama bin Laden was a good man in some ways, Al-Rizala, run by a radical friend of Khalid Sharif, the guy that's going around with the, you know, signing a joint thing saying no to the anti-terrorism laws, the threats, you know, exaggerated, and the real problem is Jews going over to fight with Israel, or you supporting Gaza. So what's the Jews? I mean, what the hell?
Well, look, the good thing is we're having this discussion.
We're having this discussion,
and
yes.
If Tony Abbott were to call me to arrange a meeting, I'd be there in a flash. So I say to the Muslim leaders, you get there and have the discussion, because in a liberal democracy, Prime Ministers can talk to citizens. That wouldn't take place anywhere in the Middle East outside Israel. Learn that lesson.
Michael, you were part of a discussion that highlighted for me on Sky News the fact that many in the left don't want to acknowledge that there is a genuine problem with Islamist terrorism. They either deflect or they put the blame on the West for inviting this. This is one of the most absurd evasions I've seen. It's Simon Banks of the Labour-linked lobbyist Hawker Britain.
What an appalling lack of knowledge about terrorism in this country. One of the biggest sources of terrorism, in fact, over many years, has been the family court, and people going after judges in the family court. That's got nothing to do with people's religion or race or background.
Seriously? Seriously? You know that we've got to say, oh, don't worry about Islamic terrorism. The real terrorists are people going after family court judges?
I mean, he's an intelligent guy and successful businessman. Anyone to talk about how the Greeks were heavily involved in these types of threats at the family court. Look, the problem for Labor is that in Western Sydney, so many of their branches and so much of the Labor Party is now influenced by Muslim voters, and up to 20% in some electorates. And you see otherwise sensible people like Tony Burke and others not prepared to come out and condemn these types of activities and this type of behaviour, which they should. And Simon Banks says those absurd things. I mean, look, the fact of the matter is Muslims in our community have got to come out far more strongly and condemn the actions of ISIS. And what they said the other day in The Australian was, we don't know enough about ISIS to really comment on it.
This is a joke. This is a joke. Are you worried, Gary, about Labor's role in actually excusing, apologising for not confronting?
Yes, but look, the real numbers are
but
the Labor Party has a number of seats where the Muslim vote is big enough to matter. The Liberal Party
20%.
has one, and on the basis of that one seat in Sydney, rolls over on the amendment to 18C. So come on, it's about how tough you are in responding to these things. The present government has almost nothing at risk in pushing a free speech agenda, which is the very heart of Australia, and it fails to do it. So I know that my old mob sort of have a number of seats beholden to the Muslim vote, but at least they've got some seats at risk. Tony's got one at risk, so get on with it.
Piers, something else the media suppressed. The ABC and other outlets refused to show the video of James Foley, which was shot by the people who beheaded him, and refused as well to report the speech he was forced to give attacking the US at knife point. The New York Post, edited by Cole Allen, Australian, a friend of yours as well, was criticised even for just showing the knife being held at Foley's throat. Now, this is a dilemma, to show or not show.
No, it's not a dilemma. It's time we outed the utter bastardry and evil of these people. Now, you know, ISIS is an Islamist group that basically has been killing other Muslims to date. James Foley was the first one. He wasn't executed, he was murdered. Let's be frank about it. And I think that the Post and newspapers here, including the Daily Telegraph, the Herald Sun, showing a still photograph of moments before James Foley was brutally, savagely decapitated, serve a great purpose. Now, we had this argument about what to show and what not to show when MH17 went down. And there was criticism then of showing some of the photos which included body parts. Now, I think that we've gone too far in trying to sanitise and boundarise the images
Look, I think
of
you're right.
evil.
Pierce, I think you're right. I just wonder, for example, no one seemed to think we should have been protected from that famous picture from the Vietnam War of this poor girl, naked and burned, running away from a napalm attack. Now, Piers, there's one danger that the media won't show pictures that contradict its preferred media narrative, but only shows pictures that confirm horrors that do fit its media narrative.
You're absolutely right, Andrew, and I have come to the conclusion after, 45-odd years in journalism that David Marr was correct when he said most journalists come from the left. And most journalists now, unfortunately, are using what was a very honourable profession to run their own political agendas. And that's why that horrific photo that Life magazine and Time magazine and so on ran of that poor child screaming as she ran down the street served the purpose of the so small L liberals at the time, because
that's right, Piers. I reckon that's right. It fitted that, but I think show that, but maybe show more of the James Foley thing. Piers, thank you so much for your time.